So big themes of the Beat Retreat this week. I think a major one has been cooperation, right, across buyers and sellers. Like so many major broadcasters, you heard it at the NBCU event this week, as well as here, working on things like cross-platform measurement. And a couple of the big themes that kind of we've heard a lot about here have been transparency. So this topic of transparency and understanding kind of like where ads are being placed and being able to tap into things like mindset, because that's how great outcomes are delivered. That's been a major topic. Another one has been standardization. So this is really important, kind of like a cross-currency world. But when we think about standardization at Iris, we're very focused on the content side of things. And when buyers are purchasing media from different television sources, they don't necessarily want to know that they're buying comedy in 750 different ways of putting comedy out there. Right? They want to understand kind of what they're getting in one consistent manner. So we're really encouraged by some of the kind of work towards standardization and adoption of content IDs like the Iris ID. And then another one that I'm really happy about is privacy. Privacy has been a big topic, not for regulatory reasons, which is like the stick that comes out that no one wants to talk about, but for a couple reasons that are really exciting. So I think the first is user experience. Privacy is really important for user experience. There's a survey that was done on ad blockers, and it was found that 60% of users who use ad blockers are doing so because they don't like privacy invasive techniques. And they also cited that most of those users found that the privacy invasive techniques resulted in a terrible user experience. So that kind of comes up again and again. And another big reason why privacy is so important is business advantages. So we know that Apple made a big move when they said ask app to not track. Like those 5 words took $10 billion away from Facebook. And I think what we're going to see is internet service providers and others that historically don't always have the best relationship with consumers. They're going to start to change the way that they think about privacy. And there's ways that they can kind of build more privacy-centric practices around their routers in the home and actually kind of restrict things like IP address, which is going to really upend the way that we think about identity and currency. And so that type of change in privacy is something that I think is really interesting. And then lastly, a really important thing to kind of look at with regards to privacy is outcomes. And are there kind of ways to achieve outcomes that marketers want when you have privacy-first practices in place? And Magna, inside of IPG, did a really exciting study on this called, what was it called? Mindset Matters. And that is just like a great research study if you haven't seen it. And it talks about kind of using content signals as opposed to identity signals. And everyone should check it out if they haven't seen it.
How's the topic of transparency? You mentioned transparency. How is this notion of transparency in streaming different than it was in TV or digital?
Yeah, transparency in connected TV and streaming is a very different environment. And so I think it's worth breaking down kind of like how it's been approached in digital and then in TV, and then looking at this environment's unique and kind of combines them both. In digital, you had webpage URLs. Webpage URLs provided for tools like contextual, suitability, verification, measurement, all based off of a URL. We kind of don't think about it, but so much tech is built off of web pages, including Google's $50 billion AdWords business. So it's a big part of the ecosystem. And that type of transparency doesn't exist. All the technology built off of URLs doesn't exist at all in streaming. So we have to kind of rethink how we approach and kind of have those products. In television, TV buyers think about having program level information. They know when their spots ran. They have a lot of transparency. Then in streaming environments, it's been very opaque, right? And it's a new environment. And honestly, the main reason is that the growth of viewership has been far faster than I think anyone thought. In 24 months, it's reported that the FAST and kind of the ad-supported streaming ecosystem is actually going to be bigger than cable and broadcast. So that's happening very quickly. And what you need is new technology that can allow for kind of some parallel between the two. So we're focused on this problem specifically around content IDs, and we're proud to say that the Iris ID, which didn't even exist at all 3 years ago, went to kind of into the bid stream for the first time in 2021. It was at like a fraction of a percent. And now we're hearing reporting from individual DSPs, and we're getting reporting from a lot of them that they're seeing it up to 30% of their global video avails. And we think that's really important because then sellers can allow what data they want to be allowed into the bid stream, and they can actually negotiate with buyers in terms of what different types of transparency they provide, and that gives them a lot of latitude and also gets buyers what they're looking for.
I think that's an interesting segue into a little bit of what you guys do, because you are providing transparency on sort of a content level. So how is video level content data a deterministic input for measurement?
So I think this is really important to think about. A content ID is a unique ID for every TV show or video clip, and it allows you to create a consistent data set that works across supply partners. And this is really important for cross-platform measurement. So if you're using kind of different types of measurement solutions to actually have currency grade outcomes, and you want to have that, if you have a consistent data set for content that can be agreed upon and can be interoperable, it's really important, and it's something that we're really excited about. We're beginning to build our content ID into some of these new measurement solutions and some of the traditional ones. And so we're excited about some of those kind of upcoming announcements.
So we hit two of the themes already from the Beat Retreat. We covered transparency, and then we also talked about sort of that interoperability. I think it brings us to our sort of biggest theme, and one of the biggest shifts in measurement is sort of the upfronts. So with the upfronts coming up, what are your thoughts on sort of the upfronts as more budgets shift to CTV, as the industry moves towards these new measurement tools that bring a new level of transparency to the equation?
I think what's exciting about the upfronts this year is like this move towards more standardization. So in the past, there's been requests for things like show an episode, which, kind of using an analogy like baseball, it's one of those things that it is a very valuable vanity metric. It's almost like in, a batting average or kind of an RBI. It's useful, right? It has some indication, but it's not as valuable as having a consistent signal, like knowing data inside the video and exact contextual segments that are going to be consistent across different supply sources. And we heard this come up a lot the past few days. If you have that consistent signal on every video, as opposed to kind of getting just a show or episode name in post-campaign reporting, you can actually use that data through all parts of the buying ecosystem, from planning to targeting to measuring outcomes. And that's really important because that means that you can actually more properly value really high quality content and tie it to outcomes, regardless of which publisher that a buyer is buying on.